right, let's go ahead and get started. We have with us today Julien Nicolai, a friend of mine for many years now. I want to introduce you a little bit to our listeners. Julien, welcome, and glad you're with us.
Appreciate it. Thank you. It's great to be here.
Yeah. We first met and got to know each other about 8 years ago, right, at a Winterfest in North Carolina. Great event. Awesome time, always, every year. And a couple of years later, I came and I visited your church. Your pastor, Julien Costia, well, it threw me there. Pastor Julien Costia invited me out to come and to teach seminars, I believe, for a weekend. And I met with you guys as well. We did some relationship things, and then I met with you and a couple of other youth leaders and stuff. Yep. And our relationship really kind of grew and blossomed from there. And we've been on this journey for quite a while. We've been close friends now for about 6 years, which it's been a good time.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah, thanks for coming out and being on the podcast, man. And I'm really excited for our listeners to be able to, hear me kind of pick your brain and ask you different questions about your experiences in youth ministry and being a principal of a Christian academy and serving in all the different capacities that you do, Camp Rhema and so on. Let me give a little bit of background on you. You've been in youth ministry now for 16 years. That's a little bit of time. You feeling old yet?
I hate that. Can we bleep out that number?
Yeah, so that's 16. No. So 16 years in youth ministry. You've been in youth leadership for 8. You've been a camp director for over a decade now. So that's a lot of time. Yeah, it's 11 years, right? And then Christian school leadership of a private Christian school for 4 years, where one of the roles that you have now is you serve as the principal of the school.
Yeah.
So a lot of different hats, a lot of moving pieces, a lot of experience, especially for someone of your age. You're young, but you're still a veteran in ministry, and you've had a lot of experience. And I just think that's one, a testament to our churches and our Romanian kind of mentality of getting people involved in ministry, and two, a testament of your commitment and willingness to follow the Lord. With that, tell me a little bit, what are you working on right now?
Yeah, thank you for having me on. Really excited to be on here, and been keeping up with the episodes, and so really been enjoying that, as well as being ministered to from those episodes. So really appreciate that. Yeah, our friendship goes way back, and it's been an awesome time. These phone calls that would last, like 2-3 hours minimum.
Yeah. Do we ever talk less than an hour?
No, I don't think so. I don't think so.
Those are the days that I put in my 10,000 steps, because
exactly.
I'm a phone call pacer, so I'm just wearing out my floor.
Me too. Yeah. It's either that or drives.
Yeah. Or drives.
Yeah. And so, right now I've recently taken up the role of being the principal of Georgia Christian Academy. So this is a project that our church started about 4 years ago. Very, very interesting journey. So just a little about that, and maybe a little testimony in it, if that's okay. So, about 4 years ago, that's when our church started talking about this project of doing a private school, elementary first, to start off as an elementary school. And at first I wasn't, I was of course supportive of a school, maybe a little questioning timing and whatnot, but it's crazy how, and I say crazy in our perspective, right, of how God transforms us. So I was unemployed and at the time, and I was praying for God to give me something. I was looking for work. I said, okay, until I find a career, until I find something more stable, I'm gonna get something temporary working at Home Depot.
Right.
I had some project management experience in cabinets beforehand, and so it's like, let me work at Home Depot as just a sales associate. When I go there, they offer me a management position, actually, and they're like, hey, you have quite a bit of experience in cabinetry and appliances, and so we'd like to offer you a manager position. The only issue is they said that I would have to work non-negotiable on Friday evenings and Sundays. And I'm like, okay, that's great. I appreciate the offer. But for me, it's non-negotiable that I have to be off on Friday evenings, which is when we have our youth nights.
Right.
And then on Sundays when we have our services. So I said, I'm not going to do that then. Just give me a sales associate role. So I'm sitting there in the waiting room, in their office, and I'm just kind of like, it's a light prayer. It's not like a, full on my knees. I'm just sitting there and I'm like, God, talking to the Lord. And I'm like, God, I did this for you. Can you do something for me?
Meaning you're specifically not choosing this management position.
Right.
Because it takes the days that you're doing ministry.
Exactly.
You're saying, Lord, I'm making this decision with you in mind. Would you please help me in this situation as well?
Right. And so the next day, I'm on the way to a meeting with my pastor. And on the way, I'm stuck in traffic. And as all of us ministers do, we're sitting there and we start daydreaming. And I start daydreaming. I'm like, man, that would be so cool if pastor were to offer me a job.
I remember we spoke, I believe it was that day.
Yeah.
And then we spoke the next day as well.
Yeah. And probably one of those phone calls, or maybe both, were in tears. But
I can neither confirm nor deny.
I probably shouldn't have said that. So I was on the way, and I'm starting to daydream, and I'm like, man, that would be so cool if he could offer me a job. And then I go further because my imagination, it loves to run,
right?
And it just thinks like I was going in my mind, and I'm thinking, okay, so if I were offered a job, what would I get paid? So I say probably in between this amount and this amount. My imagination, it runs wild and it's creative, but it's also realistic,
right?
So it was a realistic number, but I was like between this range, this number, and so I go to this meeting and we talk about. It was actually after our first year with Camp Rhema. Right. And so it was kind of a debrief meeting. That's all we were there for. And we talk about, we debrief, we talk about Camp Rhema. And then he goes, hey, Julien, that was like probably 20 minutes. And then he's like, Julien, I need your help. He's like, I've seen your experience in project management. I've seen how you handle these different roles in the different projects that you were given, including Camp Rhema. And at the time, it wasn't called Camp Rhema, but he's like, your experience in this and how you handle it. He's like, I'd like to offer you a job. He's like, I need your help starting this school, kind of handling the project of getting all the paperwork and all the different logistics, all the things that's required to get this school done.
So you didn't come into the school established when you came on to the school project, right? I know this story, but I'm saying it for our listeners. You came on in the establishment of the school process.
Yeah. So all that was done is the building. They broke ground on the building, but that's it. So they didn't do anything. We didn't have a name for the school. We didn't do anything. There was no steps towards a school being created.
Because to manage a school is one thing. To create a school and then go to management, those are two completely different worlds.
Yeah, as I learned. Yeah. So that's basically what it was, is create a school.
Cool.
And he's like, I don't have time to fully dedicate that. I have to be in ministry. So if you can do this. And so, I'm like sitting there and just trying to contain myself and, and he goes,
I talked to God about this on the drive here, right?
Right. I'm like, I need a few days to pray about it. I knew the answer, but he's like, how much do you want to get paid? And I'm like, okay. That question always, gets you because you're like, you don't want to overestimate. So I'm like, what would you think, And he tells me the exact middle of that range that I was daydreaming. I thought I was daydreaming. I didn't think that I was praying, but I was daydreaming about. It was the exact middle of that range that I was talking with God.
And Julian's immediate thought was, I should have imagined a bigger... No, I'm kidding.
Like, man.
Why'd I strike the ground only 3 times? Like with the arrows. That Bible story.
This is the problem with us being realistic. And why couldn't I be an optimist?
That's funny. But what an absolute testimony.
Yeah.
You're driving to this meeting with your senior pastor, with your leadership, about a follow-up meeting from a camp that you guys had done. And in the meeting, you're like, what if he offered me a job? Okay, well, if he did offer me a job, what would I want to be paid? Roughly, this much and so on. And, we all daydream about these things. And you get there and he offers you a job and he picks the smack dab middle of where you, what a testimony.
Yeah. So it's like, but that's one of many testimonies that came out of starting this school, going into this, just even being more available for ministry. It's great because this is a private school that it's funny that I'm using this term, but it's a safe space.
Right.
It's a safe space for us Christians, that the solution always will be Christ first.
Right.
Always Christ first. For example, if there's a bullying situation, the answer is we're going to first pray for that bully.
Right.
We're going to pray for that bully. We're going to pray for us to have a good day. We're going to approach it with Christ first. And it's really been an awesome time of just God transforming me first to be like I'm full on head first into this ministry. This is an amazing opportunity, but it's great to see the fruits of it.
Right.
Our goal with it is to not shield kids from the world. We're not trying to just make them blind to it, but rather I want to teach them how to look at the world.
Right.
How to look at it biblically, how to look at Christ-centered. So it's a biblical worldview shaping school.
No, like I have two boys, right? They're 11 and 8, and they go to public school right now. And we also have living with us my wife's little sister, Felicia. She's lived with us for 10 years now, so she's like a daughter to us. And Feli goes to Lee University, and Lee University is a Christian university. Now, her first bachelor's degree she got from Sac State. Her second bachelor's degree in nursing right now she got from Lee University. And she compares the two. And she's like, it's the wildest thing. Like, I'm at Lee University, and all of my professors are Christian, and all of the students are Christian. And every morning, whenever we start class, we start off with a biblical devotion. We pray for class. Then we go into the actual conversation. We talk about nursing from a Christian perspective. We talk about bedside manner from a Christian perspective. We talk about, evangelizing and integrity, but all of those things from a Christian perspective. And we'll reference Bible stories whenever we're talking about different examples. And I just think that that's so awesome.
Oh, yeah.
Looking at my kid's situation, they've been to private school, and I just think to myself, man, I would so much rather have my kids in a private Christian school, so much so, even more so, in a Romanian private Christian school, like, GCA?
Yeah, GCA. Yeah.
Georgia Christian Academy.
Yep.
Because on top of everything else, like, I know the culture, I know the worldview. It's not just Christian, but it's like Romanian Christian. It's my people, it's my tribe, And so, yeah, if I lived in Atlanta, my kids would be in your school. Believe that.
They'll have to apply for it. No, I'm sorry.
They probably couldn't get in. Yeah. You need references. Oh, we're in trouble. Nice.
I'm just.
You're good.
But that's exactly it. No. Is when you compare, like, we're bringing Christian perspectives in everything, in all subjects, and it's awesome. It's I love. One of my favorite things is hearing kind of like the behavioral correction that happens, because where in public school it would be, well, don't be a bad kid, we're gonna correct you from and then there's gonna be punishments and all this. There are consequences at GCA, but the biggest thing is we're approaching it from a biblical worldview, where we're approaching it Christ-centered and looking at redemption, looking at how can we work with Christ to transform this young person, this young child, and it was awesome. We had an experience. It was a non-Christian Romanian family that had their student at our school. This was the first 2 years, or I'm sorry, the first 2 years. And at first he was not wanting to hear about Jesus at all. And he was young, but he just refused to. Everything else, he was great. But whenever Jesus was mentioned, whenever they would pray, and they do Bible time and prayer every day, but just refused to. And then one day, like there was a time period where he was starting to get some behavioral issues more and more. And at one point, he gets sent to my office, and so we have the chat, and I'm asking him, why are you doing this? Like, why are you behaving this way? And he says, well, I don't know. And I'm like, well, did you ever ask God? He's like, what do you mean?
Nice.
And I'm like, well, have you ever prayed about it? And he's like, I don't know how to. And I'm like, you don't know how to pray? And then unprompted, he's the one who asked me, can you teach me how to pray?
That's very
And it was awesome. So we were praying together. Like, I would say the prayer, he would repeat after me. I mean, he wasn't taught this. And
Right.
so it's cool to see these kind of experiences. And that's why it's a great opportunity. I mean, we're doing some big things this upcoming school year.
Nice.
So we are pre-K 3 years old to 8th grade. Right.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's quite a spread.
Yeah. We don't have a huge amount of students right now as we're still growing, but it's great to see that, that spread. And we're going to be transitioning to a hybrid school. So the kids, we're not made to be in a classroom,
right?
8 hours, 5 hours,
Completely
5 days
agree.
a week,
Yeah.
So what we're doing is they're going to be going on alternating days to school. Then on Friday is going to be like a fun day where we're calling it Enrichment Friday, where it's the different specials. So art, music, PE.
Nice.
We're going to have a Romanian language class.
Nice.
Both during school hours, but also after school hours for the community. And so it's a way to bring in our heritage in the school as well. The school, we are non-denominational. We are also, although we are under the Romanian Church, we are not a covenant school. We're an outreach school.
Oh,
and
great.
So that's the exciting part, to see people not just in our church, but also from the community.
Yeah.
Well.
No, that's fantastic. I think it's so important to have a solid institution, like the church, like the family, and then also like the education system that is Christian and biblically based. I think it's fantastic.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah. No, that's great, man. Tell me about youth ministry. What do you got coming up, man?
Where do we start?
Yeah. Well, let's start at the start.
Yeah.
What made you get into youth ministry? It's been some years now.
Yeah. Let me see if I can remember. What was that number again?
Was it 16 years ago?
I was speaking rhetorically.
Yeah. I caught that.
Thanks. Yeah. So that's another, just, I don't know, if I look at what God has done, it's very interesting just to see that journey. I've always talked, I speak a lot about it with my youth, about a spiritual journey map, where you look at like every decision that you made or that God led you to, and to see how it affected the trajectory of your life. And so for me, this, I mean, was probably like towards the end of middle school. I was going early with my older brother. He was on the worship team, on the youth worship team.
Mm-hmm.
So I would get off the bus. I would go with him to youth worship practice because I wouldn't have another ride to youth night. And so I'm sitting there, and I'm the kind of person where it's like, I don't like to just sit there.
Right.
I need to do something. And so I approached our media guy at the time, our youth media person, and I asked him like, hey, can I help you with something? I'm here, so if I can help you with something. Yeah. If you can start coming in on Fridays and untangling the wires, the cables, that's what I did for a long while. I would just sit there and untangle the cables. Anything he needed, I would go do for him. If it's like, hey.
So sorry, that's where you got your start in serving in some capacity. Yeah. It began with a simple question of, hey, is there anything for me to do?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then saying yes to whatever that thing was.
Exactly. No matter, and that's what I always am trying to tell some of these, the youth is, you don't have to start immediately with a sermon.
Right.
You don't have to start with, let me be in charge of a department, in charge of a ministry, in charge of something. Let's start off with the small, like when God sees that you can steward, that you are stewarding properly the small, he's going to give you, he's going to trust you in the big,
What wild concept. There's a verse in Luke 16:10, right? Faithful in little, faithful in much.
And that's exactly it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You ever see people disqualify themselves from even starting in ministry because they have stipulations and expectations of, well, if I'm going to be in ministry, then I expect X, Y, and Z to happen?
Yeah. Yeah. And we've both met those kind of people.
100%.
But I'm just trying to always encourage them, hey, just be patient. God has a plan for all of us. He has a trajectory for all of us.
Right.
But are you willing to trust and submit to that? It's the thing that I've been talking about a lot with people when we talk one-on-one is, what I want more than what I want is what God wants.
Right.
And so, I may not want to, as soon as I got off the bus at school, from school, quickly shower, get ready, go to youth, and sit there and just untangle cables. And then we would have to move speakers, move all kinds of equipment, and get dirty, get sweaty, whatever. I didn't want to do that, but it was, hey, I'm here just to serve. I'm
Yeah.
here just to whatever I can help with.
You know where I got my start in ministry? So I came back from a youth camp where I met the Lord, and I was radically transformed at the age of 16. And I remember I just wanted to do something for the Lord. And from my perspective at that time in the church, if you didn't sing or preach, there wasn't much to do.
Yep.
You know what I mean? I mean, don't get me wrong. There is plenty to do. But from my limited perspective, I was like, well, I can't sing. I don't have any musical talent. I can't play in the orchestra or the band or the, brass or whatever else. I don't have any technical knowledge at all of like sound equipment. And even if I did, I don't have an ear to hear it. And I couldn't preach them, and I just got saved, so that wasn't, really up my alley. And I thought to myself, well, where can I serve? And whenever we would do activities or events, I would set up the chairs and the tables. That was my ministry.
Nice.
So I would set up chairs and tables, and I would tear down the room and make sure that it was all good. The thing about it is, like, I really, really loved God. You know that camp zeal that like young people have when they have an experience with the Lord at camp? I had that experience, but unlike most kind of common camp experiences that we see, it didn't wear off after 6 weeks. I mean, I stepped into, like, God had so radically transformed my life. Like that verse says, he was forgiven much, loves much. I had understood the weight of my sin so heavy that it completely changed me. And that zeal hasn't left me in over 20 years,
Sorry, go ahead.
No, so I just wanted to say, the thing about it is I would set up chairs and tables with zeal, with passion. So I remember, like, we would set up chairs and tables, and I hated it when other people were helping me. Because in the Bible, right, it says, do everything as unto the Lord. And other people wanted to, like, cut corners. I'm like, yeah, just, like, set them up. And I was like, dude, like, I really want to set up this room.
Don't take my blessing.
And so sometimes what I would do, and this is a true story, is we would, like, set up the room hurriedly, and then we would set it up, like, the day before sometimes or a couple hours earlier. And then everybody would get ready to leave. And I'd be like, oh, let me just go, and I'll meet up with you guys later. And I would go back into the room by myself, and I would like get really low, and I would look down the edge and make sure all the tables look really good.
I think it's called OCD.
Listen. But the thing about it is look, I remember I had so many encounters with the Lord, the same kind of encounters that you have down at the altar, the same kind of encounters that you have whenever you feel God's presence around you, in setting up chairs and tables. They're the same experiences that I would have, that I still have whenever I'm preaching a sermon, and sometimes, and I just know God's presence is there. Those were the first, like, experiences I had where I was meeting with the Lord in serving rather than in, preaching or singing or, having somebody else minister to me, but through ministering.
Yeah.
I remember one day I was driving home, and I had this Jeep that I was driving home with, and I had wrapped everything up, and I'd gotten into my Jeep, and I was driving home. And on the way home, I was just talking to the Lord, as I always do. And I remember thinking to myself, God, I really wish I could sing. I really wish I had a voice, I really wish I could lift up and exalt you in worship. And it was really,
every preacher.
but it really bothered me because I wanted to experience that, And I remember from being on my feet for hours that day, setting everything up, and I could feel like my blood pulsing in my feet, and my lower back hurt from just lifting up those like old school like pews, benches, And I remember thinking to myself, Lord, with every pulse and with every ache, let that be my song of worship before you. Because I can't sing, but I can do that,
Yeah.
And so the thing about it is it became such an important part of my life to be able to worship the Lord through service. And no, that absolutely marked me. But the thing is I feel like young people often will miss out on that because they get so hung up on, well, this is the methodology in which I have to serve God.
Yeah.
I got to do it this way. And it's like, no, you can really experience God and have an amazing supernatural experience the same way that you have at worship, the same way that you have at camp, the same way that you have at the altar in serving, even in setting up chairs and tables and unwinding wires. And
But that's the thing is, it's always that focus, and it's coming from two people who do preach, who are on stage.
Right.
But it's like, that's the focus of ministry. That's ministry. That's not ministry. The ministry is so much more. Ministry is the sleepless nights.
Yeah.
Is the tears. And I want to, I know we're getting off topic of that
That's
original
all right.
question, but I do want to build off that camp zeal, because that's the thing that breaks me, has broken me from when I first started in camp ministry, is and I think I've shared this with you, where I remember this was right before I got involved with camp ministry. It was right after a week of camp, and it was an amazing week. It was a super powerful week, as camps usually are, And I remember seeing this camper post on Facebook. It was a time where Facebook, I know probably right now it's not cool anymore.
But young people were on Facebook
Yeah.
at one point in
Yeah.
time. This is sometime after MySpace, okay? So
They created a bulletin on MySpace, and
there you go.
no,
So a young person posted
Yeah.
on Facebook, right?
yeah, they posted up a status, and it's like it's kind of cute their vulnerability and just very openness of it, but they posted on there like, God is good. He did so much this past week at camp. It was such an amazing week. He transformed me. I'm done with my past self. I'm done. I'm serving the Lord completely. And a few days later, and again, it's their vulnerability, but that same person a few days later posted, never mind. I thought that God touched me. I thought that God
Oh,
transformed me, but it was just an experience. And I remember that heartbreak I felt in that. And I didn't even really know this person, too well, but it just broke me that that is the experience. And this person was just vulnerable and open about it, transparent about it. But that's the experience of so many people. Whether
Right.
it's a camp, whether it's a conference, and those things are amazing. But so often, young people will live spiritual paycheck to paycheck. They hope that they have enough of a spiritual high to get them from one conference to the next camp, to the
Right.
next conference, to the next whatever big spiritual event, and that breaks me. And that was kind of my drive in youth ministry, but even specifically in camp, is to cultivate an environment where they're not losing that zeal. And I think that's part of it is what are you doing when you get back? Are you,
That's the whole question.
like I wonder, and praise God that you didn't, but I wonder though if when you came back from that week of camp, if you just continued on in your life,
Right.
what would have happened? Would we be sitting here?
So anybody who's been in youth ministry for a while, like in any job, right? You do any job for more than a year or two, you begin to notice trends. Like in the beginning of any job, everything's an emergency because you don't know what's a big deal and what's not a big deal. So everything's a big deal, And then when you're hanging around with some veterans, they're like, oh, don't worry about that. And you're like, I feel like I should be panicking about this, but I'm not. Same thing with youth ministry. You notice trends about things that happen. And camp and altar calls are one of those places where you see trends. Young people, or all sorts of people, will come under the altar, have a supernatural experience. We're super excited, and it's not a bad thing. It's a very extremely good thing. How do I know? Because God meets with people. So obviously, if God's signing off on it, it's a very good thing, right? But the problem is afterwards, after a couple of weeks, the experience will wear off. They go back to their same old life. And the truth is if nothing changes, nothing changes.
No.
There's no change in my day-to-day life, which is why, like with our small group discipleship ministry and as ministers, something that we've always pursued where people, whenever they had an experience with God, we pursued those people.
Mhm.
We pursued them for discipleship. Because it's more than conversion, there has to be discipleship, which comes after conversion. So after they would have an experience with God, we would want to meet with them and disciple them and walk with them and build disciplines and do a small group discipleship together weekly. And then that would create consistency in growth and model and shape their life so that way they look more and more like Jesus. When the emotional high wears off, right? What ends up being there is discipline and resolve and commitment, and then that ends up creating transformation.
Absolutely.
But I know that we've had this conversation many times. Yeah, and I know that you see the exact same concerns that I have about, I love the way you put it, living spiritually paycheck to paycheck. That's a really profound statement. It's powerful.
And it's sad because of how much of a reality it is. And if we're not careful, we can even fall spiritual paycheck to paycheck.
How does a minister fall spiritual paycheck to paycheck? What does that look like?
I think in these kind of conferences, but even in powerful services, even
Right.
what happens when something happens in your life where you can't serve in whatever, like let's say you're not preaching as often, what
Right.
happens then when your ministry, there's one of my favorite songs is When the Music Fades.
Right.
And that was birthed actually from being why that was my favorite was when I was in sound in media in the media department. Is I was so hyper focused on making sure the sound was pristine, and I would get frustrated, and I would get angry, and I would like if things weren't well, if someone didn't hold the microphone properly, if someone didn't plug in their guitar the right way, or they weren't on time, if these things that I believed were supposed to happen didn't happen, I would get frustrated. And then this song, it just really kind of started speaking to me is when it fades, when all it's stripped away,
Right.
what is left? What is and that's where with us ministers, going away from the sound, but just in general with whatever we're doing in ministry, when that work, because that's all it is just work. Once
Right.
that fades, what is left? What is left after all of that? And so that's how I think oftentimes we can fall spiritual paycheck to paycheck is
Yeah.
if we're not flaming the fan or fanning the flame.
Right.
Fanning the flame.
No, the truth is there is the business of ministry.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like the institution is very, very important. The institution, the structure, the organization, the administration, all of those are super important, but they're not the main thing. And when they become the main thing, then it becomes idolatry. And we could easily look at the institution, the logo, the quality of music, the quality of rhetoric and speech and so on, and not even be in the presence of God anymore.
Yeah.
There's better singers than we have in our church in the world.
Yeah.
And in my church, that's for sure. There's better public speakers than a lot of preachers that I know.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not the quality of the sermon, and it's not the quality of the music, right? It's the presence of God that changes everything. And I feel like it's so easy as a minister to have your one-on-one time with the Lord and keep that as the main thing, but get so busy in the business of ministry that a good metric to measure for those of you that are ministers or that are serving in any capacity, if the only time that you spend with God is in preparation for a sermon, you might be living paycheck to paycheck spiritually.
I was going to say that with when you're only reading the Bible to prepare your sermon,
That's it.
you're living spiritual paycheck to paycheck.
Yeah.
And we get very, very quickly, it's very easy to fall into that.
It is because you love God and you want to serve.
Yeah.
Now the problem, like another place where you can see that easily, I teach about this often, where I'll talk about the difference between understanding that we are sons and daughters of the Lord and not employees, and I think often we fall into this employee mentality where we go, Father, just tell me what to do and I'll go do it. And it's like, well, that's what the angels are for. They're messengers, they're servants in that sense that God sends them to do something and they go and they do that thing. But the Lord wants to have more than just a employer-employee relationship with us. We're sons and daughters, right? On top of that, the other side of it is like a good metric, a good way, to measure is if the only time you talk to your leadership is when you're at work, you might have a boss and not a father. Like I talk to my dad when I get home. Like I used to work for him in construction, but I also used to talk to him in the field. But we had a relationship outside of the work. If the only time you talk to God is at church, that's a problem. Then maybe you're an employee. Maybe you see yourself as an employee, and God wants more than that. He wants relationship.
Yeah, and it's like in that preparation for the sermon, in that preparation for whatever you're doing in ministry, it's like you do get a lot out of it. You do get a lot out of the Bible study that you do, or whatever you're doing to prepare for that sermon. But it's so easy to confuse that for my personal relationship with God.
Right.
Oh, I did spend time with the Lord. Yeah, but you were spending time with the Lord to get this done.
Right. Right.
So
you ever have God talk to you like you feel like the Holy Spirit's leading you into a subject and you're preparing to preach on it, and it's just the Lord talking to you about it, and by the time you figure that out, you're like, oh, I now have like very little time to sermon prep. You don't want me to preach about this at all.
that was for me.
That was just for me. I'm going to speak in a whole different subject. Okay. Yeah, that happens.
Yeah, that's when you really start praying.
Yeah. That's also when you realize, Lord, is this the only time that I've given you to speak to me about this? Well, that's a problem.
Yeah. It's almost as if I'm only going to speak to my dad when I need to ask him for something, when I need something from him.
So flip the script on that. If the Lord is going, the only time you come to me is when you're in need, but you're praying, Father, I want to be closer to you. Look at it from God's perspective. What other option does he have other than to put you into need?
Yeah.
If that's the only time you go to him. God, I want you to speak to me. I want to be close to you. But the only way that I'll speak to you is if I'm in need.
Yeah,
Well, all right, then God will answer your prayer and put you in need. And you'll go, God, why am I here? You asked for this,
yeah. That's a, I don't know. That's such a powerful thing, and so how do we regulate ourselves? How do we remind ourselves of this? Because it's great we have that issue, or not that we have that issue, but there is that issue present, or that risk of us living spiritual paycheck to paycheck as both youth, as just believers, but also as ministers. How do we resolve that? How do we remind ourselves?
No, that's a great question. So what we're doing right now is we're going through a process in this conversation, right? Any good counselor will tell you that in order for transformation or change to happen in your life, you have to do three things. You have to admit that you have a problem, you have to be teachable, and you have to do the work. We all know people who can't admit they have a problem. We all know people who can admit they have a problem because they complain about it all the time, but they're not teachable. You ever have people in your life come up to you and they're like, oh, this thing's happening, and you're like, dude, we just talked about this last week. Like, I don't understand how this is still a problem. I already gave you some good advice on it. Have you tried that? No, you don't understand. And it's like, no, you have a problem, but you're not teachable. And then we all know people that have a problem. They're totally teachable. They know what they're supposed to do. They just don't do the work. And I think that we can see this in all of our lives as well. So it's not, only specific people. This is everybody. Now, the way that you would look at that biblically, right? Admit you have a problem, be teachable, and do the work. Admit you have a problem is literally the definition of confessing sin. So in order to confess sin, you can't confess what you can't admit that you struggle with. So when you admit, you know what, dude, I'm struggling with this sin in my life, or I'm struggling with this area of my life. That's confession. It's the definition of, right? Be teachable and do the work. Those two together, that's repentance. That's the 180. So I'm trying to turn around, but please teach me. Somebody help me. God speak to me. I'm going to try to figure out a way to make and then I got to do the work. So it's just confession and repentance. That's all we're talking about, right? And so my mentor, Dr. Fred Garman, great guy, teaches me a lot of things. One of the conversations we had is he goes, look, when you talk about admitting you have a problem, when you talk about confession, what you're talking about is being aware of the problem. And awareness by itself is curative. All right? Awareness is curative. So being aware of your problem gives you the ability to work on your problem.
Yeah.
The reality is the things that end up screwing us up, right, is not what we don't know. It's what we don't know that we don't know. Those are the things that get us, It's not the, I know that I should be more disciplined with my budget, and I know that I should pray more, and I know I should fast more. It's the things that I don't even know that I don't know. I'm not working on them. Okay, so anyways, we're talking about all of this, and we're aware now of this problem of living spiritually paycheck to paycheck, and we're talking specifically about, well, what do we do so that way we don't end up in a place where we're saying, God, draw me near to you, but the only time I draw near to God is when I'm in need, so then God puts me in need. How do we discipline ourselves, right, to be able to have a healthy and a consistent relationship? So here comes the teachable part, right? The idea there is really simple. Freedom is on the other side of discipline. Often we look at discipline, right? And we'll look at discipline and we'll go, well, this is just another shackle I have to put on myself. This is another thing that I have to do. One of my favorite quotes that is one of Benjamin Franklin's, which is, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. So what'll take you 5 minutes to prevent will take you an hour to fix, right? And so in that same way, discipline is moving all of the things that you're always spending time repairing, you move them into preventing. And now all of a sudden you can do 10 times as many things in your life because you've prevented fires that you have to put out and spend all of your resources and energy on. So the idea is to build disciplines like fasting, praying, reading the Bible, but genuinely reading the Bible, like actually pursuing Jesus and reading the Bible. Like, I'll give you an example with reading scripture. You ever read the Bible or pray because you feel guilty that you haven't in a while? I have. I've done that plenty in my life.
No.
Some of our listeners might be listening right now and go, well, no, he's right. Before I said that statement, the last one, oh, he's right. I haven't read my Bible in a while. I should go read it. If you're reading out of guilt or out of obligation, the Lord may minister to you in that time, but you're going to get so much more if you're reading it out of love. Yeah. If you're reading it out of a desire to know Jesus.
Everything I'm doing is to get closer to you, God. Everything. I want to be where you are.
Right.
And so I totally, sorry to interrupt.
No, please.
That, but I totally agree with that we so often do things out of obligation. And that's why we don't get things out of it. if I'm only attending a service because I have to, then yeah, God can minister to you through that. But chances are it's going to be a lot rarer, you know?
If he does minister to you, it's not, you know, it's not because of your lack of interest. It's in spite of that. You know what I mean? It's not because you've checked the box and you've shown up, you know, out of guilt. It's in spite of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the truth of it. And so, like, one thing that I always challenge people to look at is why. Like, why do you do what you do? You know, and so often, you know, like you and I both have so many conversations with young people all over this country, and people will come and they'll ask me, like, you know, Eddie, I want to read my Bible more. How do I read my Bible more? And my first question, I'm going to be like, all right, why do you want to read your Bible? And they'll look at that question like, well, that's such an obvious question. I didn't even spend time actually articulating it, but well, you know, because we're Christians. Okay, great. So why should Christians read their Bible? And they almost get frustrated with me. But I'm trying to get to a point to where I want you to understand why you're reading the Bible. Because if you know why you're reading it, then your why will always give life to your what. So if your motivation is, man, I want to know Jesus, then when you read Scripture, you're reading Scripture in search of Jesus. If your reason why is, I feel guilty that I haven't read it in a while, then you're going to read just enough to stop feeling guilty. But you're not going to find anything.
No. And then you're probably not going to be consistent either.
No.
that habit's going to drop really quick because there's no real motive. It's just obligation.
Yeah. And the thing is when you scratch that itch of motivation of I chased away the guilt, then you're going to stop doing it because your why gives life to your what.
Do you think that also then kind of correlates with that whole idea of I'm serving God? And I think you spoke about this with Peter on the episode on a previous episode with it. But I'm only serving God so I don't go to hell.
Oh yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
It's like, okay, you know, so then there's a question that Francis Chan he asked, and it's a very hypothetical question, of course, but it's, you know, if you could go to heaven and you could have all the riches of heaven, it's all there, the beauty, the no pain, no sorrow, it's just joy and rejoicing. And if you could have all of that, but Jesus isn't there, would you still want to be in heaven?
Yeah.
You know, and I think that question, and again, I know the theological problems with that question, but the hypothetical of that question is, why do I want to go to heaven? Why don't I want to go to hell? I want to go wherever God is. I want to go wherever He is, and I want to go to heaven because I want to be with Jesus. I want to be reunited with my Father, with my Lord, with my God. You know, and I think that I don't know if that would relate to this.
Oh yeah, no, I think it's a really great way of laying it out because what Francis Chan is doing in that question is he's separating the blesser from the blessing.
Yeah,
and he's saying if you didn't get stuff from God, would you still love God? And really, the heart of that question is your Christianity about Jesus or about you? Right? Yeah. Because if my entire goal in being a Christian is so I don't go to hell for all of eternity, then my Christianity center is still me. It's I don't want bad things to happen to me.
In some ways, you're your own savior then. You know, because I'm serving God that I'm not going to hell.
Right. I'm going to earn my salvation. Yeah.
It's a weird kind of
No, there's an absolute break in the way that we approach there. But you know, the thing is coming back to disciplines, right? Yeah. Okay, so when we pursue the Lord in disciplines, have you ever had this happen in your life, or have you ever seen this happen in other people's lives, where we start to have a discipline where it's like, I'm going to read the Bible every morning for an hour or whatever, right? And then like 3 days goes by and then it kind of like falls to the wayside. You're like, but I'm going to get back on, you know, the wagon and
I'll
do
just
that
read
again.
A few more chapters next time.
Yeah, I'll just catch up tomorrow, you know, and that'll be, but it never works out, does it?
No.
Yeah.
Diet starts Monday, right? You know?
Yeah. The person who hates me the most, my mortal enemy, is Tomorrow Eddie. I give that guy everything to do. Tomorrow Eddie hates Today Eddie.
I'll put gas before work tomorrow.
Yeah. It's perfect. Perfect.
You're going to hate yourself. Yeah.
No, the reality is if we're willing to pursue Jesus in a way that is honest and real, He's not a machine or a mechanism somewhere that I have to get everything right in order to win Him over.
No.
You know, I got to figure out the exact right formula. And when I figure out the exact right formula, then everything's going to, you know, come to life. And then, you know, almost like an old machine in like Indiana Jones. You got to get everything right, and then the whole thing comes to life. God's
No.
a person.
Yeah.
He has his own mind and his own ideas and his own thoughts and his own desires, and it's like everything that I could try to get close to God is insufficient, but God is doing everything on his end to come close to me, to make it available that I might get to know him.
Yeah, and it's that freeing answer to the question of, am I good enough? No, you're not good enough. But that's the great part, is you don't have to be.
Right.
You don't have to be. There's and David Platt has talked about this, and I'm sure others have, but I've heard it from David, where he talks about that whole argument where other religions will say, oh well, we're all serving the same God. We're just looking up, from different angles.
Right.
Or he's on the top of the mountain and we're at the bottom, and we're just looking from different angles.
Everybody's climbing the same mountain, and we'll all arrive at the same point at the top,
right?
Just from different sides.
And
right.
the answer is always, well, no. The difference between our God and yours is our God stepped off the mountain. Our God met us where we're at, rather than us having to go and pursue. He's pursuing us, and it's this beautiful, beautiful pursuit.
Oh yeah, no, because the idea there is that we're all earning our salvation through the way that we're walking. And don't get me wrong, there has to be something produced. Obviously, I mean, a tree is known by its fruit.
Yeah.
You say you have faith without works, I'll show you my faith by my works. And so at the end of the day, there has to be fruit, but it's not the fruit that makes me saved. It's me being saved that creates fruit.
Right.
Yeah.
Obedience. I am obedient because I love the Lord.
Yeah.
If you love me, you will obey my commands. Like if I'm not following, I'm not doing what God wants me to do so that he loves me or so that I love him. I'm doing all that because I love him. Because he loves me,
One flows out of the other.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, that makes perfect sense. What are some disciplines in your life? What are some things that you try and discipline yourself with in your, daily regiment, your weekly regiment?
For me,
where do you talk to God?
For me, the biggest thing is I relearned how to pray.
Great.
In 2013. So,
amazing.
I was not old, but I wasn't young either, And so I relearned how to pray in 2013, where I realized through some of my mentors and our different conversations that it's not, and this was kind of a time where a small group of our youth actually relearned how to pray and produce something beautiful in our youth, but where it's just speaking to the Lord. And that's one of the things that has transformed my life, and I've been working on more and more. And it's one of the things I love is just the conversation with the Lord. I'm afraid if I say pray, maybe someone's gonna think of it too formal, but it's just speaking to the Lord. Everything that's happened in my life. I mean, different testimonies, different things. For example. And maybe we'll talk about it later, but the ministry, the mission trips that I've been on, to Cuba, I didn't want to go. The first year, especially, I'm like, I really don't want to go. I was like, look, God calls us, each everywhere. We're called different places. For me, I'm called domestically. I'm called with the local church. I was like, international missions is not for me. And so when I was approached by Mike Nyatiuk and Ruth Botochan from Treasures for Troubles, if I wanted to come on this mission trip, I was like out of embarrassment, I'm like, yeah, I'll think about it. But in my head, I'm like, nope,
So to Mike and Ruth, just so you know, when Julien answered was like, yeah, I'll think about it, he was lying to you. I'm just saying.
Oh, they know that. I confessed.
Ruth Botochan and Treasures for Troubles is a fantastic ministry.
Yeah, she's been doing it, 12 years, I think?
Yeah. Wonderful, wonderful ministry. Good, godly lady. Good friend of mine and yours. Yeah, we love Ruth to pieces. And she excels at connecting people.
Yeah.
And at helping people grow spiritually and at building leaders. Empowering. That's the word I was trying to think of. She's so good at empowering.
Oh yeah.
Such a natural gifting for it.
Yeah.
And then Mike G. Knack.
What can you say?
Mike's such a great guy. Good friend. I'm working with him right now on the Forward Conference.
Oh, nice.
And with Andrea Luca, and then also with Lori Tsikorat. Good people.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
so nice being able to work with other good godly people,
No.
like you and like Pete and like so many others in putting together ministry. So
Yeah. They're awesome people. And yeah, Mike and I have been friends for a while. Ruth and I have been friends for a while. And so they did approach me about that Cuba trip. And again, out of embarrassment, I knew a few others that were going. And so I'm like, yeah, I'll go. But in my mind, I'm like, no. It was also a season where, it was out of need, but also out of just feeling right that God wanted me to do it. I wasn't getting paid for about a year and a half. This was something that, like I said, I felt led from the Lord, but it was also a need of the situation that we had. So I was like, that's a perfect excuse.
yeah, I don't have the money to go.
Right. And so, I remember it was in the summer. It was beginning of June. I call up Mike and I'm like, Mike, listen, because this was in March when they approached me. And so I let it until June, beginning of June, where, I led them to think that I was going on this trip. Sorry, guys.
The confession.
Yeah.
I'm going to have Mike and Ruth on here next. And I'm like, so how did you feel about Julien Nicolai?
You're a minister, so this is allowed. That'll be the title of this podcast. Episode, Confessions. Beginning of June, I call up Mike, or he calls me. I can't remember who called who, but I was like, man, listen, financially, like I can't do it. I can't go on this trip.
Can't swing it.
Yeah. And in my mind, I'm like, yes. And then we hang up on the call, and it's this going back to that whole just talking with God. I'm like, God, well, if you really wanted me to go, you would take care of the details. And I've always been, my parents would always tell us from when we were young, be careful what you pray for, be careful what you ask,
Nice.
because it must have been a few days later, I get a call that my trip to Cuba is sponsored. Okay, God, great, and
Should have used a different excuse. Now you gotta go.
yeah. And I'll tell you, like, I even leading up to that trip, after I found out that it was sponsored, I'm still trying to think of different ways to get out of this trip. I'm packing the night before leaving to Cuba. I'm packing and I'm like thinking about how I can call Mike and Ruth and tell them that I'm not going anymore. I just felt very sick to my stomach, like, this isn't for me. I don't want to go, I felt like I was imploding inside. It was this, and this was happening for months, just some things were going on. I was just not feeling great. I'm like, this isn't for me. And it not only isn't for me, it's not for me right now, especially. And I'm telling you, the moment I get to the airport, when it's like, it's too late for me to back out, the moment I get there in the airport, all of that goes away. All of that implosion, that stress, that anxiety, the panic attacks I was feeling for months
overwhelming feeling of doom or dread, or
but not only about the trip, it was just in general. I was not in a great place, and so as soon as I stepped there, like, everything went away, and through that week, God did some great things in the mission trip and all this, but I believe that was mainly for me, like, at least me going. That was for me to really heal. I came back from that empowered, and even to this day, I mean, that was what, 2-3 years ago. I haven't had that feeling since, and that was going on for a long time prior to that trip. And so it's these conversations with God, it just raw honesty, and I wish that more young people would understand that type of conversation with God. We were talking about the spiritual paycheck to paycheck, and I remember calling you about this. I want to say maybe sometime in the fall or maybe earlier. I was like, I'm praying this new prayer recently, and of help me fall back in love with you, God.
I remember,
because I had like we all go through these drier seasons where,
right,
and it has nothing to do with our lack of faith. It has nothing, I think, to do with our spiritual. It's just this dry season.
Yeah.
And I remember just praying this prayer of, God, help me fall back in love with you. And that's all I would say. Like, I'm walking and I understand, like, our our grandparents, or that will just walk. They're walking, and it's like out of a sigh, they're just like, "Oh, Jesus, oh
Yeah.
Jesus," like
Vai, 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 vai.
I felt.
Off. Sorry.
No, but that's what it is. These like breathy prayers, and I realized the power of and I think we've talked about this, the power of like a breathy prayer, where it's just out of all that I have, this is all I can say is, help me fall back in love with you, God.
Right.
And that raw honesty always, for at least for me, produced such powerful things and catalysts in my life that changed the trajectory of my life.
Same, 100%.
That whole prayer in the Home Depot office in the back room, where I was like, God, I did this for you. Do something for me, please. It was all I can muster, and
both of those situations have two things in common. One, they come from a deep, honest place in your heart. And two, they involve surrender.
Yeah.
You're like, I can't do anything else, God. Take the wheel. I give it to you. I don't know what else to do. Please help.
Yeah.
And that's all it needs to be. That's all prayer needs to be. I feel like we so over politicize it or over structurize it, or you have to sit like this and you have to start with Thanksgiving and then after
pray in the
Thanksgiving,
King James version.
Yeah. And don't get me wrong, like those are good models to follow, but the most important thing is you have to be honest.
Yeah.
You have to be honest. Like I encourage people and I go, look, if you don't feel like praying, would you please be honest and tell God, I don't feel like praying.
Yeah.
I wish I felt like praying, but I don't feel like praying. Well, why don't you feel like praying? Well, I don't, because I feel like I'm just sitting here and like nothing happens.
No.
Well, do you need something to happen? And just follow that rabbit trail, pull that thread.
David does this a lot in Scripture, where David is like one of the most bipolar characters. I love it. I say that jokingly, but it's like, you see at the beginning of a psalm, like he say, "Oh God, I'm Psalm 6, where I'm drowning myself every night in with tears in my bed," and it's like this sorrow, but it's like just maybe it is an exaggerated, but
right.
But like this honesty towards the Lord, and this is how I feel. I feel like I'm drowning every day. Then he remembers the moments that God was with him.
Right.
And the moments that God did work, that God did speak. And out of nowhere, you see this complete turnaround towards the end of the chapter of him rejoicing and praising God. And he's completely transformed and changed. And I think that's that raw honesty of just tell God that you don't feel like praying.
Yeah.
Just be honest.
But that's exactly how prayer works, right? Where you'll be honest with God. And as long as you're talking out your genuine heart with the Lord, by the end of it, you're like, but you know what, Lord, I know that you're going to be with me.
No.
And I know that you are faithful, and you'll be faithful. And the way that you enter that prayer is not the same person that exits that prayer.
No.
And then you go, wow, prayer actually changes me. And it does. It absolutely changes you.
Yeah.
But not if it's generic or trying to earn God's favor or whatever. And, I'm going to pray a certain way and I'm going to say these really powerful, a nice sounding statement so I can earn some brownie points with God, and then I'm going to fast. So, I put a supercharger on my prayer. Like that's not how that works.
No.
The goal is just be genuine and honest with God. What's funny is we talk to God a lot of times and we're not honest. Like, God, I don't really like, praying. I have a hard time with it. I don't really like reading my Bible. Like, God doesn't see it. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to tell God so he doesn't get mad at me. You think God can't see it in you? Yeah. It's like we hid for we were naked. It's like, yeah. That's
really,
that's the definition of man to this day.
Yeah.
I want to hide my nakedness from God because I don't want him to see the things that I'm ashamed about.
Yeah. And I think, honestly, that's oftentimes, not all the time, but oftentimes, that's a reflection of our relationship with our Father here on earth, like with our fathers, I'm blessed where I had a great childhood, great upbringing. I'm close with my parents. We're close with our siblings. Like all of us were close. And so we speak very openly with our parents. We speak very openly. And sometimes we get frustrated, but sometimes most of the time, it's this great conversation that we're having. We used to, now we still do. It just depends on schedules. Now that we're a lot older, our schedules don't align. But we used to have it almost like an unwritten rule where Saturday mornings is coffee time with the family. And we sit in the living room and we would just talk for hours, just about all kinds of different things. And that was just a habit that we did. But it was spending time with my father, speaking with him, that produced great things,
At what age?
So this started, I mean, this was from probably maybe ninth grade. So, so like 13, 14 years old.
I'll tell you why I ask. I love the idea. I absolutely love the idea. So I used to sit after I got married. In my, we'd go into my parents' bedroom because my wife and I lived on my parents' property for 6.5 years. And we would go in, and my parents would be winding down for the night because Matt had his office in their bedroom, and they also had some other chairs and stuff in there. So my mom would sit in bed and read a book, and my dad would be sitting on his office chair, and I would sit on a chair. My wife would go and sit at the foot of the bed, and we would sit there and we would talk for 2-3 hours every night. And it was some of my fondest memories where we would just talk about life and ministry and every other thing. And I'm always looking to replicate that with my kids.
Yeah.
So the first time that we got to do this, now my boys are 8 and 11. And it was maybe 3 nights ago. They come into the room. It's pretty late, and what they do is they go and they sit down at the foot of the bed and they start asking me questions just about like life. And I was like, oh. And I started talking about one thing and another. And they're like, well, why do we have to behave that way? And why is it important, Dad? And we sat there and we talked for like an hour, and then I prayed for them, and then I put them to bed. And it was like, yes, we're entering this season of life. Like these are some of my fondest memories. I can't wait to have these with my own kids. And that's why I asked, because I love hearing about other people's family traditions, because that wasn't the norm in my family to like have coffee on Saturdays and so on. But I'm curious, when can I set up a tradition like that with my own kids? And that's why I asked, because I love that idea.
When they start drinking coffee, just we would get like Saturday morning, we would get text, my dad would text us and he would just, coffee, ? And,
perfect.
And like, it would usually be around 8:30, 9 a.m. And so, we would go and it would just be nice. And not everybody all at once, but it's like we would start, trickling in. And it's this understanding that even these just conversations with God, again, replicating with how we are with our earthly father, it's like God wants to spend time with us. There's this image that I've spoken about to my youth before. Again, with my father, growing up, when he would come home from work, this is like when we were young, when we were like elementary age, when he would come through the door, we would all rush to the door, like all the siblings. So there's 6 of us.
Nice.
And we would all rush to the door, and we would shout out Tati and like give him a hug and a kiss, and welcome him home. And this was, you would see it on his face. It would always produce such a strong joy for him. He comes home from a long day of work, commuting, and so he welcomed by all his children,
right.
6 kids.
What could be better?
Yeah. And then there would be times where one of us, maybe we were working on a homework assignment and we didn't hear him come, and so he goes in his room and he changes, he gets out, and that's like the second chance opportunity. If we miss the front door,
nice.
It's the second opportunity, and so he, I imagine like he goes through that front door, we missed him, so we're not there. He goes through this to his bedroom door. He gets out of his bedroom door after he changes, and like another hope of, okay, maybe now they'll come, and sometimes we would, but sometimes we wouldn't. And it's like that disappointment of wanting to spend time with us.
Yeah.
And sometimes we didn't hear. Sometimes maybe we were kids and we had maybe some negative responses at times, but
I took it for granted. Maybe we're busy, watching TV or whatever.
Yeah. I'll go say hi to him later. And that same pain, that same hurt, I believe it's the same with God, where he wants to spend time with us. He wants to, and I imagine all those times that maybe there's been an amazing blessing in our life. Maybe even when we're going through something, or I imagine God, the Father, sitting there excited, ready to rejoice with us, or ready to cry with us, ready to be there with us.
Right.
And then we forget. We don't,
we get busy.
Yeah. And so that's why, that's like, even that honest conversation with God, going back to that is, and sorry for rambling.
No, please.
But But I believe in those moments, it's, if we're not honest, God knows. I mean, not I believe. I know He knows, and imagine the pain. You as a father, when one of your sons comes to you and you know he's not really telling the truth, it's painful.
Yeah.
That he doesn't trust you to tell you the truth.
And not because of the thing that he's lying about, but because I know that he's lying and that it's harming him.
Yeah.
And that it's creating separation between us.
Yeah.
And I hate nothing more than that.
Yeah. And that was something always with my dad that he would always tell us is, like whenever we would get into some issue or whatever, he would always say, the same thing, and still to this day is, that hurts me because that makes me feel like you don't trust me.
Mm.
And I believe that's the same thing with God is when we're sitting here, when we're lying, when Adam and Eve hid, it's like that hurts because you don't trust me enough that I'm a loving father.
It creates separation.
Yeah.
It absolutely does. And it's the hardest thing between loving parents and children.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. No, I'm looking forward to spending more time with my boys. Let me ask you a random question. When you get married and you have kids one day, Julien, what do you want them to call you? Dad, Tati?
Man, honestly, I think I want to continue the tradition with Tati.
Yeah.
I see that with my brother, my older brother, Alex. He has 2 boys, and one of them is 2. He's going to be 3 in September. And when he first started speaking, he was saying Tata. Then it just started changing to Tati, and hearing him say that, I don't know, it would melt all of our hearts,
right?
And I'm like, I think I would like to replicate that.
yeah. My kids used to say Tati, which is the Romanian kind of slang for dad from a child, and then somewhere my oldest Franklin, it went from Tati to Daddy. And then it just he became like British, and it was like Daddy. It's the wildest thing. Yeah. And now my oldest calls me Tata, and my youngest one calls me Dad. But yeah, I think about that.
Yeah.
It's just a small little thing, but they're special little things because it brings you back to that's what I used to call my dad.
Yeah, that's my ideas. I would love that. But we'll see what happens when that time comes. I still call my dad Tati. To this day,
Yeah, my good buddy Teo Scorse, his child called him dad once, and he goes, "No, I'm not dad. I'm Tati, and I'm gonna be Tati forever to you." And I thought, yeah, that's the right answer.
There you go. yeah, that's how we are.
Yeah, that's true, man. But so I know that we've been kind of on a journey, going through just all the different things that the Lord's kind of been leading us in this conversation. But let me ask you, so, we talked about that one-on-one relationship with the Lord, right? We talked about living spiritually paycheck to paycheck, how you got your start and how I kind of got my start as well, right, in ministry. But transitioning from your start to ministry and into leadership, so often when people get asked to step into leadership, they say no. What made you say yes?
So it was an interesting transition. I was like I said, I got recruited on the Untangling Cable Gang.
Right.
One member, just me.
Nice.
And
your employee of the month every week.
Oh,
amazing!
I was great.
Every month.
I was the worst, but also best employee.
Fantastic.
But there was a point where the guy who was in charge of our media team, he couldn't make it anymore, and so he just trained me to be part of media. But then in 2017, I spent the summer in Romania, and this was my first time in Romania.
So you went back to the Holy Land, and then God gave you a double anointing.
To find myself.
He came back with a double portion of the Spirit and immediately stepped into leadership. There are so many jokes that we could go off on this with.
But honestly, though, that's kind of it.
That's hilarious, Julien. So you went back. I'm trying real hard. Like my filter is in full mode right now. I'm really proud of myself. So okay, continue your story.
I'm
Julien.
excited to hear what you say after.
So you went to Romania and immediately wanted a senior position. Interesting. Anyways, so something about that Romanian blood, brother. Sorry, couldn't resist.
So, go back to the homeland to discover
Right.
myself. It was the first time I went to Romania. So, um, I uh, I was going to visit my grandma. Um, my grandma, I haven't seen her in 17 years by that point.
Really? Wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
so
It's a long time. You hadn't been back to Romania
ever
since you were
not back. I was born in Detroit, so like I never went to Romania.
So this was your first time in Romania.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so we were really close with our grandparents on my dad's side, to a certain extent until kind of the teen years, because um, they used to come a lot when we were younger. At least I remember they came a lot when we were younger, and so we were very close to them. They bonded to us, with us really well, and both my grandparents are, or they were, deaf and mute. I say mute, but because of their deafness, they lost a lot of
Ability, yeah.
to speak. So
So wait, husband and wife,
Yeah.
both deaf?
Yeah.
Wow, I had no idea. I never knew this about you.
yeah, so it was really interesting. Uh, don't really remember the details of how they met, but like there was a big community, um, where we're from in Romania, Iași. That kind of, there was a school for the deaf, and that's where my grandma went, if I'm not mistaken. And,
Wow.
yeah, so they were both deaf and mute. And my grandpa passed away, I believe, in, if I'm not mistaken, I want to say 2014-ish, something
Right
like
around
that.
there, yeah.
Yeah. But in 2017, I went to Romania to go spend some time with her, and we heard that she was dealing with some health issues, including Parkinson's and dementia.
Oh, that's hard.
Yeah, but we didn't realize the extent of that until we got to Romania. So it was me, my dad, my sister Bianca, my younger sister Bianca, then my youngest brother David. So it was all three of our first time to Romania. We were with my dad, and we go, and I remember we go to our apartment, to the apartment in Romania, and my grandma's sister was meeting us at the front, outside front of the building, and she's panicked, and she's like, right now, um, she's your grandma's having an attack, a panic attack, and so we go up the stairs, and she's kind of hallucinating a bit, and it was a very sad moment where it took her some time to remember who we were, and up until that point it was just like FaceTime, or not FaceTimes, but like Skype calls or video
Right,
calls,
right.
different, yeah. So it took her a moment to remember us, because of the dementia, even including my dad, her son. And that summer was one of the hardest summers of my life.
Really?
My dad ended up leaving after 2 weeks. So that was the plan, I was going to stay with my siblings in Romania the whole summer.
Oh, wow.
My dad was going to leave just after 2 weeks, just trying to kind of get us acquainted with it. And then he was going to go home. He had work.
And stay where? With your grandmother?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
But finding out how dramatic she was, there was a conversation of, okay, do you guys just come with me after 2 weeks, or what do we
Right.
do?
Right.
I decided to stay with my sister through the summer. My grandma lived alone. She had 2 sisters that were nearby, but still not living with her.
Right. Right.
And so we figured, okay, let's just stay with her, keep her company, spend some time with her, but also
You could help her around the house.
Exactly.
Sure.
And so that was a very hard summer, for my sister and I. I remember I would spend the whole night, like her room was right next to the living room, and I'd sleep on the couch, and I would leave her door open when she would be sleeping, and I would just listen out for her in case she would fall, or because there was one night where she fell on her knees, and because she's deaf and mute, all I was hearing was just an attempt of a scream.
Oh,
And I don't know how long she was there.
that's so
So-
sad.
So it was just these kind of situations that just really destroyed me, and like really messed me up big time for
Would she come out? I'm just curious, but would she come out into the living room in the middle of the night and see you and not know who you are and go, "Is there a strange man in
So
my
that
in
didn't
my house?"
that didn't happen. Her Parkinson's was really bad, where she wouldn't be able to walk very far
Oh, wow.
without help.
Okay.
So that's why she fell on her knees at that time. So like I said, I would stay up through the night trying to listen out just in case she would fall. During the daytime, we'd be kind of at her aid with anything she needed. And she would have these different panics, these different attacks, hallucinating. And if there was a storm going on, she would feel the vibrations of the storm but not know what was going on.
Oh, right,
Yeah.
because she couldn't. Yeah.
And so I know this is a long-winded story, but there is a point
No,
to
it's
that.
okay. Yeah. It's a wild story. Yeah.
She also so along with her Parkinson's dementia, she had heart issues. She had a failed cataract surgery. So cataracts. So
Yeah.
she was seeing double, and she had a few other issues, and so every day I would give her twice a day in the morning and at night. I would give her medicine one by one, kind of tracking it and giving it to her, and because of her heart issue. She needed a new type of medicine, and so this was while we were there. So they prescribed it to her, and we're giving it to her. And every time I'm giving it to her, she would like fight me again on it. It was like a syrup, and just a spoonful. She would fight me on it all the time, and she would say "otrava," or she would try to like you would make out the word "otrava," which is poison,
Right.
And I'm like, no, it's not, poison. It's not, and I'm just trying to give her, and sometimes I would like, put it in something or whatever,
Sure.
And then one of the days, she wasn't getting up, and she was sitting at her bed, and I thought that she died, like she wasn't moving, she wasn't anything, and excuse me, and
How far into your stay there was this? Because how long were you going to stay there? Like 3 months?
2 months.
Okay.
Like 2.5, something like that. So this was probably midway. So midway of our stay, and so we feel like she's passed. I'm
Wow.
calling my grandma's sister, and I'm like, you need to come here quick. I don't know what to do with her.
How old were you at the time?
Oh, you're making me do my math.
Hmm.
Probably 21-ish.
Okay, in your early 20s.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a pretty big deal to have
First
to
time in
figure
Romania.
out. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So I call her to my grandma's sister to come over, lights a candle by her nose to see if there's like air coming out and if the flame
That's what
flickers.
your aunt did? Or your grandma's sister?
Yeah, my grandma's sister. Yeah, because like we couldn't feel a heartbeat. We couldn't like there was
Wow.
we didn't know what was going on. Her breathing was so subtle that like we weren't even seeing chest movement, nothing. So old school trick of lighting a candle, and if by the nose, if air is coming through, you'll see the flame flicker. And we see it flicker, so we're like, praise God, she's awake. I mean, she's alive. And so we're sitting there, we're really struggling. She was Orthodox, and so my grandma's sister wanted to bring in the priest
Right.
of the local Orthodox church. He came and he did his prayer ritual. I don't know exactly what to call it, but he did it. He left, and she was still there. And so I'm like, I turned to my grandma's sister, and I'm like, look, you used your guy, let me use my guy.
Nice.
So I call, who's now my sister-in-law, actually. I call my sister-in-law to have her pastor, Pentecostal pastor, to come and pray for her. And they agree, so he comes the next morning, and when he's on the way, she starts waking up, but she's screaming and just screaming like it's a lot of noise and a lot of issues, like she's fighting me, like I'm going to her and I'm trying to give her the medicine, and she's fighting me. She's we're again making out her words that she's hallucinating, seeing her brothers who have passed away.
Oh,
like,
that's so sad.
So she's confused, and it's all this whole chaos. As soon as her room, it was her room, a living room, a long hallway, and front door of the apartment.
Okay.
As soon as he walks through that front door, keep in mind she's deaf, so it's not like she heard. As soon as he walked through that front door, she stopped screaming. Like, it was this whole chaos, this whole intense moment. As soon as he walks through, it's complete peace. He goes over, he he goes into her bedroom with us, and he sees her. And keep in mind, she has dementia. She sees him. She realizes she knows him from when she visited us back in the late 90s in
Wow.
Michigan. She was visiting us, and he just so happened to visit the local church over there in Michigan as well. And they ran into each other because my parents were from the same city, so they knew him. And so they made introductions to my grandparents. So they knew each other. So she gets all excited, and she starts like signing to him, and he's, as much as he can, he didn't know sign language, but as much as he can, he's, talking, trying to communicate with her. He prays over her this beautiful prayer. He gives my grandma's sister a Bible, and she's like super excited about it. And as soon as he leaves, she's completely up. She's normal, my grandma. And side note, it turns out that syrup that she was calling poison, I'm sitting there like I'm frustrated. I'm trying to think of, how we think about like, we're very administrative detail.
Yes.
Like I'm looking at, okay, what is the difference? What is that new addition to what we're doing in her routine that may have caused this? And I realized that this medicine. So I'm looking up the instructions, not the instructions, the warnings and all that stuff.
The ingredients. Yeah.
But I'm looking it up. It's in Romanian. I'm translating it to English, and I'm not. My medical knowledge is like zero. So I'm looking at it in Romanian, translating it to English, then looking it up on the FDA website.
Perfect.
And I find out that it has a black box warning, which means it was saying, do not give to the elderly who have Parkinson's because it can cause death. And I'm like, this was poison.
Yeah.
This was poison. Like I was hand feeding my grandma poison. Twice a day.
Wow.
Twice a day. And she knew. That's the crazy part. But going back to your original question of, why did I go to the motherland to
right
for a leadership position?
So what made you step into leadership?
So
hey, wild experience. Yeah. And it's crazy because as you were going through it, I'm sure you thought to yourself, why am I going through this?
Yeah.
What's the point of all of this? God, where are you?
That, and I'm going to be a youth leader when I get back. No, I'm just kidding. No more media for me.
Yeah, that's how that works. So, go and threaten the lives of your loved ones. But no, that's not the message here.
Yep.
Anyway,
that's part 2.
Yeah. You go back home after this?
I go back home, and I lost this passion for the media department. I was leading for a number of years. I mean, by then it probably was, I want to say maybe 7, 8 years. I don't know exactly how long, but it was a while, of leading this department. And I've lost this passion. My younger brother, Adi, was my number 2. And while I was gone, I mean, this guy stepped up and he knew all this stuff. He was researching. He was like, I realized I'm sitting there. I'm like, yeah, I'm really not needed here. I'm redundant here. And I remember looking back at Romania, and I'm like, I want to be so close to the Lord that I want to be like that pastor in Romania. That I want to be so close to the Lord that when I step in a room, I'm walking with God, and God is felt in there. I don't know how to express that in words. Like I know this is maybe a poor description of that.
No, it's a perfect description, honestly. It's like I want that wherever I go, God's presence goes with me, like that pastor.
Yeah.
Just by being there made an impact in your grandmother's life.
Yeah.
Like there was suffering and struggle and fear and doubt and confusion and chaos. And just because the Spirit of God that lives in that pastor came into that space, it brought peace with it. So I can understand that completely. What's the name of the pastor, if you remember?
It was Pastor Emil Căileanu.
Very cool.
Yeah. So that's my sister-in-law's uncle, actually.
Nice.
So, yeah. He was the pastor of the church that they were going to, and very, very nice guy. He wrote a few books too, and
great.
Really, really good man of God. And so that was my thing. Was I was looking at it. Okay, I'm in media. I feel redundant here, not because media is not important, but I'm not important there.
Yeah.
I'm not needed here.
The goal of all ministers is to work ourselves out of a job.
Yeah.
And you work yourself out of a job.
Yeah.
Great. That means that you've worked so hard, that you've set everything up, that you've raised disciples, that you're not needed anymore.
Yeah, it was great. I mean, like I said, he was doing really good, my brother Adi, so I'm sitting there. I was kind of sitting in the shadows. I'm like, I don't know why I'm here, And I remember going up to Johnny Costa. He's now our youth director, but at the time he was our youth leader. And I remember going up to him and I'm like, Johnny, I'm stepping away from the media department. I'm done with it. And he's like, okay, what are you gonna do? And he's like, and I was like, I don't know. I'm like, but I'm here.
Yeah.
I was like, I don't know, but I want to be involved. I'm here with whatever you need. I'm here.
So you didn't come with a list of expectations, of standards of, you know what, I will serve, but I need this amount of money and I need this amount of authority and this many subordinates. And
No, that was year 2.
yeah, good. No, but it's
no.
We say that, tongue in cheek, but the thing is there are so many people in ministry that disqualify themselves because they create these obscene standards.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, like some standards are obscene, some standards aren't obscene. Some things are like for example, the going into a mission trip. It's like, Lord, I can't afford this. So it's not obscene to say, Father, I don't have the money, but if you'll provide, I'll say yes. But ultimately, your goal is to say yes. And then the details, Father, if you figure it out, I'll walk through that door.
Yeah, and we sometimes get so lost in the details. We get lost in the weeds. And it was nice because it was kind of, and I'm actually realizing this now, it was a callback to why when I first got involved in ministry, was going to the media director and going, hey, I'm here. What can I help with?
Nice.
And now this was another moment that was a pivotal moment in my life of going to Johnny and saying, Johnny, I'm here, whatever you need help with.
Yeah,
and
I'm available.
Yeah.
And I'm here and I got a big old yes.
Exactly. And that's where he would ask me to do announcements, to kind of help with planning center, service organizing, the details and all that.
Right.
And I'm a big, people don't believe me, but I am an introvert. And I know you don't believe it.
I'm going to leave that alone.
But you can say it.
No, I know you well enough to know that you are, in fact, an introvert. And but as somebody who's a leader and a public speaker and travels to different cities and different states and preaches at different churches and conferences and stuff, it may not seem like you're an introvert.
No,
but I know you well enough to know that you are.
You're the first person who has agreed with me. Thank you, I appreciate it.
Everyone else is wrong.
Yeah, so. That's usually the case.
Nice.
We're always right.
Oh dear God. Strike that from the record, Jay.
First and last time I'm invited.
No, we're not airing any of this, Julie.
This is just like our phone calls. But yeah, I mean that's I was just ready and willing to serve, and God brought it up. Oh, what I was saying with the introverted, I'm introverted. I have extreme stage fright. And what I love is God has kind of like a checks and balances with me.
Nice.
Because the way I see it, and people I feel like overcomplicate it sometimes and don't trust that God knows us truly. And I'm like, no, God speaks to me the way he knows I will listen. God will set barriers up for me and accountabilities for me in the way that he knows I will know, And so for me, for example, with preaching, with speaking, with anything, talking in front of people, like I said, I'm extremely nervous. I have stage fright. I know it's not from God when I start bursting in cold sweats. when I look at my notes and it's like I can't read, I can't. I'm looking at my notes and nothing makes sense. And I start tripping over my words and I start stumbling, and it's happened to me.
You ever look at your notes and go, who wrote that?
Yeah,
I was like,
definitely not me.
Yeah. That sounds dumb. So wait.
Yeah, or you look at your notes and you're like, why did I write that? Why did I put? And so I've had those kind of moments. I've had those moments where, and I'm sure it happened to you when you first started preaching, was, you're trying to be like your favorite preacher. like the one who used to listen often. I like to listen to a lot of like exegetical, like very deep theological sermons. Those are my favorite, like teaching style sermons. So oftentimes they come with like PowerPoints,
Right.
or they have the whiteboard, the infamous whiteboard. And I'm not like that. You know me enough to know that I like administrative things. I like to think logically, but I'm a very emotional person. and
No.
come on.
You?
We have the tissues here because I know you brought them out.
You weren't here last episode.
I know.
I'm just kidding.
What was I saying? Yeah, I'm an emotional person, and I lost my train of thought.
Nice. No, you were sharing about how you're an introvert, not an extrovert,
Yes.
right? And in your introvertedness, your preachers that you like to listen to are typically very expository, exegetical kind of sermons.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
The tissues threw me off.
I got you.
Yeah, so I can't preach that style to save my life, but I would still try to sometimes.
Right.
I remember still to this day, and it wasn't long ago, where I'm like, no, I need to start kind of changing up my sermon style. And I'm preaching from John, I want to say chapter 5-ish, when it talks about I am the vine.
Nice. The Bible. Okay, you're preaching from the Bible.
From the Bible.
Yeah,
The ESV, the only true version. I'm just kidding.
Let's not do
I'm just kidding.
Let's not go down that rabbit trail.
I'm just playing. So I'm preaching from there, and I'm like, this will be so cool if I can preach with a whiteboard. And my book, I have those. There's the ESV. They're journaling Bibles, but they're by the book. So there are these individual like notebooks with.
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
So in that, man, I created this whole diagram and like arrows, whatever. It was this whole intricate thing, and I'm like, I'm gonna do this on a whiteboard.
And it looked good and everything, right?
It looked phenomenal.
You liked how it looked, the layout, all of that.
It made sense.
Uh-huh.
And then I pull out the whiteboard. This is live, and I'm doing it, and I look, and I'm like, I don't remember why I did that. And unfortunately, I was saying this out loud.
Oh. Wait, I said the quiet part out loud again.
It wasn't in my notes.
It happens.
Yeah, and so, like I remember bursting out into the cold sweats.
Nice.
My notes were like another language, and I realized that, because after every sermon, you're your harshest critic. And,
right, always.
Yeah.
Peter and I were talking about that last a couple episodes ago.
Yeah, and I'm like sitting there praying, God, why did this happen? Because I'm always trying to approach that of why, let me correct myself. And that was where, I had this realization of, I'm trying so hard to be somebody else. God created me who I, as I am, who I am. Like He created me in this very specific way. And it might frustrate some people. It might annoy some people. It might annoy me. But this is who God created me to be. So why am I trying to be someone I'm not?
Right.
And so that's a long-winded answer.
Yeah. No. So when you started out in ministry, were you the main youth leader? Were you a junior youth leader? So when you started out into leadership, is what I wanted to ask.
So with that whole, Johnny, I'm here. I became the assistant youth leader.
Cool.
And then in 2019, I became the official youth leader, but it was for the student ministry. So
right.
I'm the PRC students youth leader.
PRC is Philadelphia Romanian Church
Philadelphia
in
Romanian
Atlanta. Where do you go?
Exactly. Yeah. And so we split up our youth with young adults and students, just to kind of have a more, I guess, narrow demographic.
Yeah,
but
so you
realistically,
can focus your messages to your specific audience. You could tailor it.
Right. And we say students, but realistically, and when we say high school students, but realistically, it's high school and still college aged.
Nice.
We still have like our median age right now is 17, 18.
Nice. Nice.
So we're not really, a high school ministry, but we do say it is. But yeah, so in 2019, I became the youth leader over PRC students, so Philadelphia Romanian Church.
Nice. So you've got the school that you're principal of, you've got the youth ministry that you still serve in the student youth ministry, right? Over the students as one of the youth leaders, and then I know one of the other things, there's two other things I wanted to kind of chat about. One was, we had touched on a little bit about the Cuba mission trip, but talk to me about that. You had told us about how you ended up going, about how it wasn't what you wanted to do, and then how such a peace came over you. Tell us about the mission trip when you were on it. What was that, what was that like? What was your experience like? What surprised you about missions?
Yeah. So what's funny is, I didn't want to go, and now I'm co-leading with Ruth for the second time. This coming August, we're going. It's going to be our third time in Cuba. So this past year in October and in August, I'm co-leading with Ruth. So going from not wanting.
Yeah. not only did you not plan on going, but you had planned on not going. And you certainly didn't plan on leading one in the future.
Yeah.
That could probably be the furthest thing away from your mind. But doesn't God have such a way of doing that?
Yeah, and Aline Korean, a good friend of mine, he's the youth
Great
leader
guy.
at Elim.
Yeah, awesome guy, good friend.
Such a good guy, and he was with me on my first mission trip to Kenya. And after Kenya, I told him, I told the whole group, I'm like, this isn't for me. That's where I made my decision that international missions is not for me.
It's just not Julian's thing.
Yeah.
It's not God's calling in your life.
No, and I didn't feel convicted about it at all.
and it may not have been at the time.
At the time.
Yeah.
and that's where like throughout the years up until the first Cuba trip, Aline would, we would talk about missions every now and then, and I would keep repeating to him, it's not for me.
Like, that's great, but by the way, it's not for me.
Exactly. Then on the first Cuba trip, he actually came along as well.
Oh, that's awesome.
And
that he got the...
You know where it's going.
Oh, yeah.
And so, it was funny because throughout the week, I'm having a great time. Remember, just like I said, once I get there, everything is completely, I'm liberated from that. And I was this completely different person. And every time, I'd pass by Aline, Aline would just be like, see, you're not made for international missions. And then I remember when I agreed to co-lead, I remember running into him, and he's like, see, you're co-leading. Yeah. And he's like, see, you're not made for international. I love Aline.
You need a good friend like that from time to time to just remind you of, hey, never say never, man.
Exactly. Exactly. And so, so I'm co-leading now. This is going to be our second trip this August. Cuba is this very interesting place where the people are absolutely amazing people. They're very, very kind. They're very hospitable, just completely down to earth. It's much safer than people realize, actually. So that's a common misconception. At the airport, we feel a little bit of I would say nerves, that we're a little bit nervous, at the airport. But if you're doing what you need to do, what you're supposed to do, you're not trying to stick out like a sore thumb, you'll be fine.
Yeah.
And so it's a very interesting place because they have a lot of different denominations, but they're all pretty much charismatic. So it's like a Presbyterian. They say they're Presbyterian, but they're charismatic.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
And so God has been doing a lot of things in Cuba. It's they're struggling a lot right now. There's power outages, there's food shortages. It was sad. I think it was last year or the year before. I was talking with one of the guys there, and one of the guys in the ministry. It was our first year. It was one of our translators, and we were talking, and we're like, so is there just not enough money? You guys aren't getting paid? Or he's like, no, we have a lot of money. It's like, we just don't have what to spend it on.
Yeah, see, that's the thing that people don't understand about times in communism. They just assume that there just wasn't, any money. And there wasn't money in Romania either, but there also wasn't anything to buy if you had money. That's what people don't understand. It's like there just isn't product to buy.
No.
During COVID, people are like, times are so hard, we didn't get to use the paper towel brand that we're used to using, so we have to switch to a different paper towel brand. It's like the fact that there's paper towel is, you know what I mean? That's not a shortage. It's like, oh, I didn't get to use the butter that I wanted. Like in Romania, when you would wait in line for butter, you were waiting for butter, period. Nobody even thought to ask, well, Is it Land of the Lakes? Is it, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
wait,
I believe
it's
it. I want
butter.
I can't believe on butter. It's not butter. Like it's ridiculous, and that made us realize how real the reality of our parents' stories.
Yeah, that's good.
Going into the government grocery stores, truly, I remember my parents talking about the empty shelves, but we saw it. I mean, we thought we suffered during COVID with the shortages at the grocery stores. That was luxury. That was abundance compared to what
COVID was a pandemic of conveniences.
Yeah.
It wasn't an actual like shortage.
Yeah.
It was just a shortage of preferences. That's all it was.
Exactly. Like you said, they didn't have the brand that I like,
Yeah. They
And-
still had stuff nonstop for me to buy. The stores were still full.
Right.
I don't like that brand.
Yeah. Seeing the shelf a little emptier than usual, you
Right.
know? But no, these were empty. The only ones that were full was the alcohol section.
Yeah.
In all the government stores, that's what we noticed. But with all of this like that's going on, the people are really they're dealing with a lack of hope, which is understandable. But despite that, there's such a strong hunger for the Lord. We didn't see these like a limb growing miracle. We didn't see these miracles of people raising from the dead, and and that's the unfortunate part. Whenever I talk about Cuba, I was talking to my sister about this last night. We were talking about Cuba, and I'm like, the unfortunate part is I don't talk about it often because I see as people check out because I don't have these stories of these crazy healings.
Yeah.
What I do have is the stories of people giving their life to Christ. Like there was a group,
Which is, by the way,
the biggest
miracle.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. It's the biggest miracle. But it's not the one that attracts the attention that the people want. But I don't want us to, and this is why I want to say this is just because why I want to emphasize this is if there's anybody listening, that's the important part.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, it's great if someone's, leg gets healed. I've experienced crazy healings in my life, and we can talk about that later, but those are nothing compared to the miracle that God has done in me.
A soul transformation. Yeah. Mhm.
And so we had this group, for example, we would do street evangelism, and what I love about the way we would do street evangelism is it wouldn't be let's just go and with signs and picket, or we're not just going and every person we see we're throwing the gospel at them. No, it would be just led by the Holy Spirit.
That's awesome.
And where we would get into groups of 5-6 people, and we would just choose a direction to go in. And so one of the groups, they went in this direction, and they end up on this street, and they see and maybe I'm getting some details wrong, so I apologize if anybody's listening there that was on the group. I'm sorry. But they see a young girl. She was about, I think, 13 or 14 years old. And they start talking to her. They feel led to talk to her, and they're just telling her about the gospel, and she starts getting excited. She starts getting excited because she was dealing with some like emotional issues, some issues, and she like instantly gets transformed through them telling her the gospel. And she starts getting excited. She gives her life to Christ. They pray over her. She's so excited. She's like, hold on. So after they pray for her, she's like, hold on. And she goes and runs off, and she comes back a few minutes later with a few more kids. And they start, again, telling them the gospel. And they get excited. They get prayed over. They give their life to Christ. And then they start running and grabbing more. Within a few minutes, it was like 40 kids on that street. I say kids, but youth, young people, like evangelizing to each other. It was like God made instant evangelists just then out of nowhere. That's a miracle.
Oh yeah,
that's a miracle. You're talking about Cuba. There was a situation. It was a I say a funny miracle kind of thing where we in my group, we again, what I liked about how we did street evangelism, we went in those different directions, and we would like spend time with people. I'm fully
It was very relational.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And I will say this just as a side note, like I'm fully aware that it's not the ideal way of evangelism. You want discipleship, connect them to a local church. The way I see it is we are medics in the wartime, like in the battle. You know, I'm, it's like you have those medics where I forgot exactly why they do it, but you've seen it in movies. They take the pen and they, in the to relieve the pressure in the lungs. It's like it's not the most ideal way, but it's what I'm going to do, or rip off the pant leg to make a tourniquet. Stop the bleeding.
The truth is, I understand what you're saying. The truth is, the transformational work is what the Lord does.
Yeah.
And if the Lord's doing the transformational work through a really well-administered institution, or he's doing it in the middle of chaos, it is 100% the Lord doing the work, and it is 100% awesome and ideal because it's God doing it.
Yeah.
So I understand what you mean. Like, from our administrative, brains, a lot of times it's like, well, we'd want it, to be more structured and more laid out and more A, B, C, D. But the truth is if God sees it and goes, yeah, I'll work there, it's the ideal.
Who am I to question?
Honestly, like I'm going to tell God his methodology needs to fit within my model.
Exactly.
There's so much arrogance in that just sneaks in, like that mentality where people go, well, I wouldn't believe in a God that fill in the blank, as if God's sense of right and wrong is beneath my sense of right and wrong, and he has to fit within my worldview as opposed to me fitting within his. So it's a real issue of subtle, sneaky arrogance that'll sneak into our worldview oftentimes.
Yeah,
but you're completely right. Like, no, it doesn't fit into the model that we would like, the cookie cutter, but God doesn't need to. We need to fit into his model.
Exactly. And then I like the fact that we're, this is our third year going. So we're getting to see a lot of these people again.
Right.
And so we have created relationship, and we're working on this relationship. With my group, we went in this one direction, and we barely spoke to anybody. I'm a little bit discouraged, but I'm like, God, I kind of trust you. I kind of trust you. After a long day, mute button.
No, I understand what you're saying, because it's like God, I trust you, but I don't really think anything's gonna happen.
Yeah,
I get it.
Oops, sorry guys.
Now we know the truth. It's easy.
Oh man, it's hot in here. We then get to this house, and we see this. It was a dog on a roof. It was just this little Chihuahua sitting on a roof, and we started.
It would be a Chihuahua anyway.
It would. and what do you think the Chihuahua was doing? It was sitting quietly, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, it was loud. And so we're a group. I think 5 or 6 people, and we stop, and we're just laughing at it, oh, that's cute, funny, And the owner walks out of the house, and it's this old lady, and she starts talking to us, super friendly. Oftentimes, if you run into someone, they're going to invite you in their house. And so we go in, and she has her sister there, and so it's these 2 elderly women, and we're just talking to them, and a little boy walks in. I want to say he was maybe 6 years old, 6, 7 years old. Actually, probably about 5 or 6. He walks in, and he just sits on the floor, and we ask who he is. We ask the elderly women, and it's one of their grandchildren. And so we're just, talking. And one of the group members, one of my group members, she looks at me, and there was one other guy in our group. So it was just 2 guys, and I want to say 3 or 4 girls. And she's like, hey, what if you guys take him outside and go play with him a little bit while we talk to these women? And we're like, yeah, that's actually a good idea, because then they can kind of open up a little more.
They don't feel overwhelmed with such a large group, yeah.
Right. And we go outside with the boy, and he teaches us in the, us understanding in most broken Spanish, kind of just sign languaging it, and we're playing this game with his little ball. It's all that he has is this little black rubber ball. And we're playing, it's almost like a volleyball kind of thing. Volleyball, tennis, whatever, and we're playing. I'm not the most athletic person, or coordinated person.
You and me both.
Yeah, and so he hits it towards me, and I hit it into the bush, and it's this brush, just thorns and all these leaves.
This is this kid's greatest possession.
His only possession.
That's sad.
Man, I I remember it was hot, but it wasn't that hot, and I was like drenched in just fear. And I'm like, I have to go find this ball for him. And I'm like crawling through these thorns. I'm getting all cut up, and I'm looking, I'm searching. I can't find it. I can't find it. And I sit there, and I'm like his mom comes out. He's standing there, and I'm like, oh, it's all good, it's all good, and but then still looking through, and I'm like quietly praying and
Right.
crying, almost, like,
Yeah, like, you're feeling terrible
yeah,
about this. For the little kid, that's his whole world.
right, and I'm like, God, either either you help me find it, or you tell me where I can buy it, and I'm gonna buy him like 100 of these,
Yeah.
you know, and so I'm sitting there like praying. And I get up out of that brush, like I'm all cut up by the thorns and dirty from it, and I'm stepping, and I'm like, God, okay, I'm just gonna tell them. I'm just gonna tell them, ask them where they bought it from, and I'll go buy him some. Like I said, I'll buy him 100 of those. And so I take a step, and I step on it,
Mm.
and I'm like, thank you, Lord. And so I take it out, and I'm like, oh no, I found it. See, whatever, we play, and then afterwards, we're saying our goodbyes, but I noticed that the boy is sitting on the curb, and so I go to him, and I notice he's actually reading one of the gospel tracts that another group, I guess, ran into him and gave him a gospel tract, and he's sitting there and he's looking at it, but he doesn't know how to read,
Oh, poor kid.
and so I'm sitting there, I sit next to him, and it was this cool moment of like, knowing Romanian, so the Latin language is like,
Right.
I'm kind of like sounding out these words for him, and he's knowing how the word actually should be said. He's not
Oh,
knowing what
wow.
it's so I'm like sounding this out, and he's connecting that sound with the actual word. And so we're reading that whole gospel track and talking about Jesus in the most broken Spanish English that we can come up with.
What a cool story.
But it was amazing.
Yeah.
I prayed over him. Like, it was this great moment. We have a lot of these kind of different stories of God really opening up, these kind of doors. In our first year, Ruth and I were co-leading a small group of like in that the street evangelism thing. The time, and I'm walking down the street. We're walking down the street. I'm walking with Ruth. Our group is behind us. Then our translator is last, and we're walking. But as we're walking, I'm kind of praying, in my mind, and just whatever, I'm talking to Ruth. We're talking, praying, pray. And I pass by this house, and I start speaking in tongue. Then as soon as I stop, like as soon as I pass it, I stopped speaking in tongue and just English. Like, it was like a complete flawless transition, And I'm like, that was weird. We'll figure that out later, And I just continue walking. We get to the end of the street. This is like 5 minutes later. We get to the end of the street. We're like, okay, everybody come in. Did you feel anything? Like, we're kind of like, did you guys like trying to gauge to see if
Sense anything from the Lord, maybe?
Yeah,
And
exactly. And the translator's like, no, but we can go after. She's like, there was just a house that when I passed by it, as I was passing by it, I was speaking in tongue. When I passed it, I stopped speaking in tongue. And I'm like, are you talking about the blue house? And she's like, yeah. I'm like, by the high school? Yeah. And okay, so maybe we should go now.
Nice.
So we go.
And you had the same experience walking by that house.
Exactly the same. Yeah. So we go, and we go to the front gate, and you're trying to figure out. You don't want to just
Barge in. And
yeah. So we're standing. We're looking at like her flowers, and so she steps out of her house, and she starts asking, like, talking to us. We're just asking her about her garden, telling her it's beautiful garden. She had different vegetables and fruit and flowers, and so she's like, oh, why don't you come inside? Let's come in under the shaded porch, because she was like, it's really hot. And so we go there, and as we're going, and I see through her front door is open, and I see through the doorway that on her wall is a big painting of Fidel Castro. And I'm like, okay, and like we kind of gather in our group, and she's here, and our translator looks at us, and she's just speaking quietly in English. She's like, we have to be careful with this one. She's like, she's elderly, and she's definitely a supporter of Fidel Castro. We have to be careful to not say anything to where we don't get reported, you know? Like, okay, so we're talking just about different things, how she likes living in Cuba and all this, and she's not even subtle about her support. She's like, oh, you know, Fidel is like, she's basically talking about him like he's a god, and then I'm like, oh, where Ruth and I we're talking, we're like, we kind of want to start pressing a little more, we just feel that we need to. And we asked the translator, hey, look, is it okay if we do it? Because we leave. That's the other part about missions is we need
The
to realize
translator
that we
stays
leave,
behind,
but they
yeah.
stay. We don't
Yeah.
want to cause them problems. It's
Right.
not a fear of man. I just don't want to causing in The Insanity of God, the book The Insanity of God. Nick Ripken is the author, and he talks about causing someone else to be martyred does not give you the glory, like it does not
Yeah.
produce glory, like you're not doing anything with that,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's not a blessing.
Yeah. No, I agree with that for
Yeah.
sure. Like you don't want to put other people in danger.
Exactly. If I'm martyred, but I'm not going to cause someone else to be.
Yeah.
And so she says yes. She's like, okay, let's do it, but do it carefully. So we start talking, we start bringing up Jesus, and she actually explains that she was a Christian,
Oh, wow.
before the revolution. And she's like, but once the revolution happened, it kind of, I stopped, and I stopped believing. And then we're talking, and we just kind of sense like this pain in her eyes out of nowhere, and so we started talking to her and asking her, hey, is there something going on? And she tells us about how her grandson, I forgot how, but he died when he was a young boy, and she said that she never got over her grandson or son. I'm sorry, I can't remember exactly the detail, but she said that he died and she never got over it. She's like, I feel like this heavy like burden on me, this big hole in my heart, and so we start. Of course, that's the way to the gospel is
Right.
Well, Jesus can fill that hole.
Right.
He can lift up that burden. And we start talking to her to the point where, just to quickly summarize that moment, was she gave her life, she rededicated her life to Christ.
Wow.
And allowed us to pray over her. And I remember us leaving there, and our translator was bursting in tears. And she's like, you have no idea. She's like, this kind of stuff has never happened. And she's like, it never would happen. This is an abnormal thing, especially for the elderly to give their life to Christ. And I'll tell you one more powerful story, at least for me, for our group.
Yeah.
It was that same year. We visited. We were doing food distribution, and we go to this. It was our last house of the day, and we drop off the food, but we're also using the food as a way to talk about the gospel.
Right. Right.
And we're talking with this elderly. It was an elderly couple and the sister-in-law, and we're speaking to them about the gospel, and they're like being nice about it out of embarrassment, just like
You want to be polite because you guys are nice, so I want to be nice in return. And
exactly. And they kind of just brushed it off, whatever. And so we decided it's time to leave. We get in the wagon, and the sister-in-law asks for a ride to town.
Nice.
And we're like, yeah, sure. And we're like, yes, high-fiving each other subtly. We're like, this is the way, we get extra time to tell her the gospel. And so she sits in our wagon, and it's like, it's a horse-drawn, a horse carriage, so we're like sitting in there, and she's here, and then it's our team, another, some of our team members, and then our translators here in the corner. And I, we're sitting there telling her the gospel, like different ways of how to, different ways of introducing the gospel to her, different things about Christ, and trying to, like, she's stubborn. Like, she just does not want to hear it. We would say something, translator translates it, she's just not wanting to. But then I notice that whenever the translator was saying something, but just from herself, like she's not translating it, she's just like coming up with her own rebuttal, she would listen. The old lady would listen. And so I'm like, okay, guys, I'm like, in English, I'm like, listen, let's stop. We need to stop talking. And I turned to the translator. I'm like, this is actually all on you.
Mhm.
Like, you need to tell her the full gospel in Spanish, not from us. You need to tell it directly. So she's like, okay. And so she tells her the gospel, the full gospel. I don't know exactly what she said,
Right.
but I can kind of make out some words.
Pick up words here and there. Yeah.
And the lady is like, yeah. She's like a little more responsive. She's answering. Actually, she's asking questions. And then we drop her off, and we're like, okay, that was interesting. And then the carriage driver turns around, and he's like, that was for me.
Wow.
He's like, I've driven these carriages for these groups for years. He's like, but nobody has ever told me who Jesus is. And he's like, this was for me.
Wow.
And he starts thanking us and then talking about it more. And then he gives his life to Christ. We pray over him, and we decide, we're like, oh, we have a Bible for him. It was our last Bible, actually, Spanish Bible. Pull it out of my backpack. We give it to him. And Ruth tells him, she's like, start with the book of John. And she like opens up the book of John, and she's like, read the book of John. And he's like, okay, thank you, And we get off the carriage, we're talking, and this is like maybe an hour later. We notice him from the corner, and this is we have a picture of it. This is one of my favorite pictures. We notice him at a distance, and he's still reading the Bible.
That's awesome.
And like, not just glancing and turning pages. No, like he was sitting there reading. Like I would see as his head is moving through the pages, reading, then flipping the next page. And it's actual reading.
Yeah.
That's
awesome. What would you trade that for, Julien?
Nothing.
Honestly, right?
and that's like, none of it makes sense. I'm not made for international missions. I like my bougie stuff. I like my comfort.
Uh-huh.
But there's something about those moments that I didn't mind the rice and beans. I didn't mind the heat and the bed that felt like a cardboard, like not cardboard, like wood. It was just wood. It wasn't cushioned. I didn't mind all of that stuff. I didn't mind the mosquitoes. I didn't mind, the frustrations, all that stuff. I don't mind it because of that moment.
Yeah.
That's what it's all about.
Yeah. Missions is the only place where you go to bed with no AC on a metal grill, sometimes not even a mattress. No. You go to bed at 1 a.m. and you wake up at 6, wishing you could wake up at 5 to work every last hour until 1 a.m. again.
No.
Because it has so much purpose and value and transformative work. Yeah. I love missions. Missions are great. And I encourage everybody to go at least once, even if you're not called to be in missions, even if it's not your thing, even if it's not your thing now, maybe it will be later, but at least at some point in time, go on a short-term mission trip.
Yeah.
Go with the right heart. Go, a 7, 10, 14-day mission trip, and go and experience what it's like to be outside of your culture, outside of your world, and go tell people about Jesus.
And the other part is, just trust God that in his sovereignty, in his power, in his all, who God is, just trust him that he's not going to waste your time there.
Yeah.
There's going to be something that's going to happen if you're truly honest, if you're truly surrendering that week or however long you're there. Just trust him.
Yeah, the thing is so often we think that we go do missions, but God always does multiple things at the same time. Yeah. And it's like, the Lord used us to do missions like when we were in the Republic of Moldova, but God also used those places to transform us.
Yeah. Yeah, just because we can't multitask doesn't mean he can't.
Right.
Yeah, and yeah, I mean, hey, our Cuba trip is still open, the registration. So,
great.
If anybody wants to register.
Oh, that's great. Julien, one more thing before we go. Tell me a little bit about Camp Rhema. I know that it's the camp that you're in charge of, that you direct and lead. We both love camps, and I just want to go on the record and say, in case anybody's ever heard, I've always been for the name of Camp Rhema. I love the name. I've always been for it. I'm also a terrible liar. So the story is, Julien had pitched the idea about the name of the camp, and I just gave him a hard time for it.
After it was already done.
After it was already done. But the thing is he asked my honest opinion, and I gave it to him. And then, I'm just saying, if he ever asks you for your honest opinion, don't give it to him. You'll never hear the end of it.
but I will say this, since you call me out here, I'm gonna call you out. Is he told me, remember you told me like, it's a terrible name.
That's not what I said.
Okay, I'm paraphrasing, but there was a lot of poking holes in my bubble.
I was just showing you where the light comes through. That's all, buddy.
To be fair, I asked. True. So if I didn't want to know, then I wouldn't ask.
No, but it is a good name, and I love the story behind it.
It pushed me though to make sure that we get out our we get our message out.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I appreciate that motivation. and every time David is in charge of our marketing, David, my younger brother, he's in charge of our marketing for Rama, and we're always talking about this, that Eddie Sfringel does not like our name, so we got to make sure that we do a good job in the marketing, so I can get a thumbs up from him. I didn't get a thumbs up, but I did get a pat on the back. So
it's a process.
It's a process. It's a process.
No, but I know that you and I both love camp.
Yeah.
And I know that we both love administrative things and structuring things well and doing things with excellence before the Lord. Tell me a little bit about Camp Rhema, and then and then we'll do one more thing as we close up after that.
Yeah. So Camp Rhema is like, it's such a special thing to me. If there were one ministry, it would be that for me. It's just it's why I love camp, and you can probably agree with this, is everywhere we go and I want to be careful how I say this. I don't want it to be misunderstood. Everywhere we go, we put on a sort of mask, not a mask, but just a filter of.
Sure.
If
you're
I'm
going to show up a certain way, and yeah,
if I'm at work, I'm a certain way. If I'm at church, I'm a certain way. If I'm in public, at the store, at the mall, wherever I am, I have to put on a certain demeanor. I don't know, mask.
Yeah. Got to put your best foot forward.
Right.
You got to make sure you dot your I's and cross your T's. And I get you.
But at home, I get to put my feet up. I get to take off the mask, be myself. Right? That's how I see it at camp. Is you have a week where everything is stripped away. You just be yourself.
Yeah.
This is the moment where that's where you can take off that mask. And that's how it was for me when my first year of camp.
Yeah.
Where that was the first time I had that honest conversation with the Lord.
Awesome.
And so with Rhema, it's it's the spoken word of God. That's what it means. And so
that's what it means?
You're so busy hating on it. But the story of it is, my whole life is about God speaking to me in different ways. And it was talking about that spiritual journey map that we were talking about at the beginning.
Right.
Even with that. So how the camp started the first year, that was God speaking and changing the trajectory of my life, and I didn't realize that how much it was going to change. The different ways that God spoke to me. I'll share another miracle. I had a rib that stuck out for about 4 or 5 years. I damaged it.
Really?
It was like
anyway.
It was a CrossFit injury. I tried CrossFit, and
you
0 to 100.
You tempt me so much, and my filter's in overtime. It's not even my fault.
Hey, that's the great part about this medium.
Can't wait till we're off the air. I'm going to bully you. I'm kidding.
You guys heard that? So it was an injury where, like, literally I had a part of my rib that was sticking out.
Wow.
And it would hurt all the time.
I bet.
Yeah.
It's a rib.
And I'm one of those that, like, exhaust all your efforts before you go to the doctor. Like, you need to be collapsed on the ground to go to the doctor. And so
nice. I am the opposite.
Oh yeah?
Yeah. I go to the doctor because I'm married to a nurse.
See, I don't have a nurse. So I had this rib that stuck out, and I went to one conference, Bethesda Church in Michigan.
Yeah.
Really great conference.
Great conference.
Phenomenal one.
Yeah, I've served there multiple times, and just a really, really good conference. Good people.
Oh yeah. Their team is amazing, and so I'm there. This was just a few years ago, and I go up to the altar call. It's the last day. Last night, everybody is up at the altar call, and the preacher, I forgot his name, but he was a guest speaker there. He stops the prayer and he's like, "Hey guys, okay, turn to your neighbor, the person next to you, and get in groups and pray over each other." And I'm like, I'm not for that, but whatever. Like, I look next to me, and it's this like, it was maybe a 13 or 14-year-old girl, and I'm like, great, like this is
What am I going to relate to her about?
what am I gonna open up, So, but I'm like, okay, everyone else is taken up, so I'm like, what's your name, and someone recognizes or someone notices, sorry, from across the whole church that it's just me and her. It was a friend of mine, and so she comes and joins us. Great. Oh, cool. So now it's three of us. It's not weird. And so we just talk, like we don't even really talk, but we're like, okay, let's go into a prayer. There was just a few people who knew about that rib, by the way, close friends, and I don't believe any of them were there actually that weekend. In the middle of the prayer, she's praying over the girl, and my friend, she's praying over the girl, and then she just turns to me out of nowhere.
The girl praying or the 13-year-old?
The girl praying.
Okay, your friend had come across the room.
Yeah.
Okay.
So she's praying over the 13-year-old. And in the middle of the prayer, my friend, she turns to me and she goes, "God, I also pray for the healing of his body." And
Nice.
I'm telling you, immediately my rib went back in place.
Wow.
Like,
what a testimony.
Yeah. And so it's all about this spoken word, like God speaking. And so I love this idea. It's been powerful in my life. It's been very much evident in my life of God speaking in different ways. And so that's why we came up with that name. It just makes sense. It was the birth of the camp was through God speaking.
I do love the fact that there is a story behind the name. It's not just like, oh, like this, markets well or whatever, I love the idea and the heart behind it.
I looked through the Greek, through the Greek dictionary, and I said, okay, well, this word I like, and now I have to try to make a story. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, nice. No, but it's fantastic because the goal at the end of the day is to get people into a place where they feel like, dude, I really feel like God met me. God spoke to me.
Yeah.
God communicated something to me. And now I'm in relationship with him. And that's really that point of Genesis.
And that's our vision, our motto with this camp, our goal is to create a generation that's listening out for God's voice.
Oh, wow. That's very cool.
And so, that's what we're doing at this camp. And it's an amazing time. It was about 2 years ago that it was in our last service, and we were there was a devotion about kind of just surrendering yourself and truly not giving up until you hear from the Lord.
Yeah.
And there's the music, there's the people praying, it's an altar call, it's all crowded, it's towards the end of the service. And I remember I'm praying, and I get down on my knees, and I'm just praying, and then all of a sudden the music kind of fades. It stops, and I'm okay, and I'm just still praying. And then I hear this commotion, like loud noises. And I open my eyes, and unprompted, the entire chapel, worship team, the campers, everybody, they all got on their knees. And for an hour, it was this silence of just this I don't know, like it wasn't like complete silence. It
Right.
was quiet whisper prayers of and crying and just for an hour. Just
That's amazing.
Like
what
it
a
was
special moment.
Raw moment
Yeah.
of listening out for God's voice.
Yeah.
And so it's basically the structure of it is a week, no phones. That's one of my favorite parts. When
I
they
agree.
check in.
Fantastic.
Yeah. When they check in, they give their phones, and they don't get in until the end of the week. But it's a week of, there's different activities. We have our last day, we have this big like Olympic game kind of thing.
Nice.
We call it the Emma games, and they get into these color groups, the small groups. But the big part of it is our services. So our services, we have nightly services, and it's some time of worship, but also what we do with our themes is they are moments where God speaks.
Nice.
And so like last year we did the garden. So
Nice.
one of the biggest moments, that he spoke. The year before we did the throne room. So
Nice.
this year the theme is the encounter, and it's these different moments in Scripture where Jesus encounters someone and they're completely changed. They're completely
Wow.
transformed.
What's the age group?
So it's from 13 and up. So
Okay.
our median age would be probably about 17.
Okay, very cool, very, very cool. And then lastly, the last thing I wanted to bring up is, Julian, if people want to get a hold of you, if they want to come on a mission trip with Treasures for Troubles with you guys, if they want to come to Camp Rhema, how do they get a hold of you?
Yeah, so the easiest way would be, through social media. We have like our Rhema page, which is Camp Rhema, RHEMA. So that's our Instagram. For the mission trip, it's T4T missions. Or they can go to camprhema.com to register.
So for the camp, it's camprhema.com, or they can find you on Instagram.
On Instagram, yeah.
Yeah, and then for T4T, Treasures for Troubles, is that T4T.com?
Missions. That's for the Instagram.
Oh, T4T Missions.
Yes, and
Very
so that's where we have all the registration stuff. But if they were to get a hold of me, obviously they can do it through you or through our Instagram page for our youth, which is PRC students. So PRC, Philadelphia Romanian Church students.
Cool. Yeah, we'll also drop some links and connections into the caption of this post. Yeah. And Julian, thanks for coming on. It's been good catching up.
Yeah.
Appreciate you coming down and being here with us and sharing your heart and sharing your testimonies and so on. And I'm sure it's very encouraging to a lot of different people. Always a joy, my friend.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks, guys. God bless.